Hello, and welcome to the Blue Shadow Podcast. My name is Joey,
I am Dan.
and today we are going to be talking about episode 6 of The Acolyte. I am very excited to talk about this episode, Dan. We are, for the first time ever, watching it, and then pretty shortly after, immediately recording it. So we usually have a little bit of chance to talk about it, so we really are getting our full-on first impressions here, which is pretty exciting.
I'm excited. And I think this is a good episode to start on. Because it's not like
I agree.
episode 5 where all this crazy stuff just happened. We're kind of just... A lot of things happen, but not, oh my goodness, I just watched Yord turn around like an owl. Too much.
They, don't worry, rub salt in the wounds, though. They rub salt, was not too much,
No.
but they rub salt in the wounds, which was unfortunate.
Yes, but...
I do want to say, just right off the top, I love this episode, and I think this show is doing a wonderful job at pacing and like giving things out. Like, I think we can't have last week's episode without build-up, and we won't be able to reach a resolution to the, finale of the season without some additional build-up. And like, they're kind of putting, I think, their chess pieces in place for the finale here.
I agree. I think we're in for an action-packed 2 weeks. And again, we very briefly spoke before we started this about we have some theories. And I think we might have some of the same theories.
Well, we'll talk about them as they arise, as to not spoil anything. As we do, we start with talking about the episode. This is, again, the Acolyte episode 6, titled Teach/Corrupt. We're back to having the dash in there. And I want to start by saying, Dan, I think your theory that you said a while ago, that the dash means something very specific. I'll let you say it again, because it was, in fact, your idea.
Yes, I personally think, and like you said, I feel like this kind of reinforces it. The dash represents a break between May and Osha. Whenever there's a dash in the title of an episode, May and Osha are on separate storylines. But, like, for example, Day and Night, where they were together, there was no dash. And I think this episode title kind of highlights that again. And I think the title itself is very appropriate for a lot of reasons.
I 100% think so. And I think the title, again, being Teach/Corrupt, I don't honestly think that either of those things have actually happened yet.
Mm-mm.
But like I said, they're kind of setting the stage for the teaching and the corruption to happen, which I think is really exciting.
Yes.
Anything else about the title before we jump into the next?
Not yet.
Like the actual story of the episode? Awesome. All right. So the episode picks up from Osha's perspective. She wakes up in what when we were watching it, referred to my wife as Sith Camp, Chimere's base of operations. And I don't quite know. I mean, they're using the term the Stranger now. Can we just settle on Chimere?
Yeah. Also, Sith Camp, I think, would
Are we good with that?
Yeah, Sith Camp would sell out if it was like a Disney vacation. Just wanted to throw that out there.
I would want to go.
Would you?
We might diverge. I'd go to Jedi Camp.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go to Sith Camp.
Hey, you're boring like that.
Maybe my wife would drag me to Sith Camp. I don't know. Or drag me to Sith Camp. I don't know. But anyway, Osha wakes up there, and she I think she's able to piece together what's going on with May.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she had done the swap thingy. She found the knife and clothes. She put herself in a little less regular clothing. It kind of looks like, are you familiar with Her Universe? It's Ashley Eckstein's company.
No, but
she makes like Star Wars inspired clothes, and Osha's outfit kind of looked like a Rey inspired outfit.
I thought the same thing. I thought the planet looked very similar to Octo.
What?
Oh,
we'll
my
get
bad.
there
My bad.
Because no, this happened. So the credits hit after May leaves Sith Camp, and like the crack in the wall, and after the credits, we cut to this planet, and it's referred to as Unknown Planet. Every planet has gotten a name. One's familiar and unfamiliar. Is it Octo? Why else would we keep it a secret?
Maybe it's Exegol before global warming.
Oh dear, that's quite the theory.
Yeah, that's my most off the wall theory of the day. I apologize, but I think it's Octo. I do think it is Octo.
I think for me that would be fitting to Kymir too, because he seems to really just want to spit in the face of the Jedi,
Mm-hmm.
and I think we got our first breadcrumbs maybe as to why. And I think for him to set up shop on the Jedi's place of origin, which is what we know from, when all the stories that Octo has been in, that that he would set up this. We're gonna go Sith. I think we'll talk about that in a little bit, but it's fitting for a dark side user, Sith Lord, to set up shop here.
Especially somebody with
Any other thoughts on?
Yeah, somebody with his motivations. You could tell he's clearly driven by spite at this point. It looks.
Oh yeah.
Like you said, the biggest slap in the face would be going to Octo and setting up camp and trying to train new Sith there. Sorry, I said the S word.
I think I'm okay with the S word. I think I might think that's actually what's happening.
I think so too.
S word again being Sith. And again, we'll get there. So after, we see this stuff about the unknown planet business, we do see these cute little new creatures. I like them. I'm a sucker for Star Wars creatures. And they kept showing them, and it made me want to buy one more and more.
Maybe they're at being the biologists we are, maybe they're the old species before the porgs.
I was waiting. If it is Octo, you would think it was a porg, but maybe it's an ancestral porg.
That's the word I couldn't think of. Ancestral.
There you go. See, I'm good for something. Anyway, after that, we see Osha kind of off in the distance looking, and she sees Kymir kind of walking away. We leave them and head back to the perspective of Sol and May. And Sol hadn't left Kofar yet. We see the ship leave, and he's struggling to communicate with the Jedi. And I think the show positions it in a really fun way where it's both a technological and a personal, emotional difficulty to communicate.
Yeah, I think Sol is troubled. We've seen
100%.
We've seen the foundation of this big bad Jedi, who's apparently the guy. By all accounts, he is pretty high up there, and I think we're seeing this facade of Sol start to crack.
And we'll talk about it a scene or two down the road, but I think the crack is a relief to me, gonna make Sol kind of stand up to be a pillar of the light side rather than something where he's he might, as Kymir said in the last episode, embrace his darkness, but use it in a very different way, use it to make the right decisions and prevent the bad thing from happening again. But we'll get there when we get there. So anyway, he's struggling to communicate, and he hesitates to say, he says there's been, and he really is struggling. I can already hear the people clacking on their keyboards away because they're why didn't he just say it was a Sith? I feel like he can't even begin to process what happened.
Yeah, he took this team on this secret mission, and all of them get killed in a very brutal fashion. And now he has to go tell people on this mission where he wasn't supposed to be that he ran into a Sith who killed the whole team. I see why.
And you could tell you could see it in his face, the weight of having to think about even saying that word. It made him cringe. And I will say that Jedi that he's talking to, his name is Mog.
Yes.
I don't like him.
I do. I don't have an issue with Mog.
We'll talk about Mog.
I'm sure.
I think I'm gonna say I think Sol is showing what a good way to be a Jedi is. I think Mog is not doing that, but we'll talk about it in a second. Anyway, we have this communication. There's the struggle, like I said, both personally and technologically, and May is kind of walking through the ship, and she hears kind of flashbacks, maybe Force echoes to her original Jedi test, which is not something we got to see because we only saw Osha's, so that's kind of cool to consider, something we didn't see. And then May kind of pulls her dagger out as if she's going to kill Sol, but he kind of says, Osha, pilot the ship. I got to go fix the comms. So at this point, and last week we were going back and forth about whether we thought he knew or not.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when it eventually comes to a head, the reveal happens rather quickly. Do you think he's even remotely suspicious at this point?
No, I think his mind is so clouded. Why would he even think that May would be there instead of Osha? I think he just has so much going on. He has no reason to doubt it's Osha. And
I don't think even if he had like a slight force inclination, I don't think he would have gotten to, he wouldn't have been able to get at that with all the stuff that's happening. Sorry about that. I cut you off.
No,
go ahead, finish your thought.
No, that's I think. Well, when talking about the Force and what we've seen in the past, and anytime we see like meditation, it's always clear your mind. Like, to be one with the Force, you should have a clear mind, and his mind is the furthest thing from clear at the moment, in my opinion.
I completely. So I think you are on track to say, yeah, he probably really just thinks it's Osha, and he then goes down the ladder into the like living area of the ship, and this is one of my favorite things that this episode did. Soul, before like actually pressing the buttons to fix what he needed to, had a good while to just kind of sit there, and we got to watch him almost in a relatively what's a short while on screen, like in actual time for being on screen. It gave us this extended scene of just watching him kind of go through like all the stages of grief, like all at once, like just the decision to give this character that much time to just feel his emotions, I thought was such a wonderful choice, and it just makes you grow even closer to Soul. Yeah. What did you think of that?
Oh yeah, we don't see many Jedi deal with loss. Anytime we do, it's always abbreviated. Like, the big one that jumps out to me is when Qui-Gon dies in Phantom Menace. We didn't see Obi-Wan's grieving process. And I know it's a little different because he was the apprentice, and not apprentice, Padawan, and his master was killed. But Soul just not only got his Padawan killed, got how many other Jedi Masters killed. And it's not even his fault that we know of.
He had no clue what was going on. I think the fact that he was even able to get out alive is kind of a miracle.
Yeah.
Not to say he isn't skilled or anything, but like it's just the fact that they encountered that is just crazy. And so him having that time, I will say it reminds me of a deleted scene from The Last Jedi that I so wish was in there. I don't know if you've ever seen it, where like Luke learns of Han's death, and they give Luke a second to like he's crying, like he's in his hut, like by himself, and they gave him that time to like process it. And for me, that's always been an important scene, and I consider it as if it's like in the movie. And so to actually take something that I wish was in a movie that exists already and have it in here, just like right off the lot, I loved it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got very excited.
No, it's okay.
I got way too excited about watching a man cry on a screen, but I love what it means for the story. So anyway, he after that, he goes through, he kind of like gathers himself, takes like a deep breath, and then he fixes the comms. But as this is happening, we see Basil running around, scurrying, trying to fix Pip. I loved it. This felt like something out of the prequels.
Yes. It was... I'm sure they used it as their comic relief. And it did just that. It broke up the tension. Because, we're in a very heavy scene. We're feeling for Soul. And then we just see Basil running around. And it's fun. It's funny.
And he is a scurrier. He's like moving really fast and like not quite sure what he's doing. And it was also nice to see Pip return, which was, I'm a big Pip fan.
Yes.
They have the Yord Horde. What about the Pip posse?
Well, we'll keep working on names. That wasn't good. Anyway, so that happened. It really did feel so prequel to me. And then we cut back to Osha and Chimere. Chimere strips and starts to take a little Sith bath in this lake, river, bay, I don't know, some sort of body of water. I was like, this is a little much? Not much, but like this is more than Star Wars usually goes for. Yeah.
So, moving past Darth bathing, Osha kind of sees this, and she's able to she sees that he leaves his lightsaber on top of his clothes. I think he knows exactly what he's doing here, first and foremost.
I think he sensed her from the moment she woke up, and that's why he was only 30 yards ahead of her, or 50 yards ahead of her the whole time.
Mm-hmm. He knows. I think he, and we'll see, because she grabs the lightsaber, and he immediately is like, "Is it nice to feel it again?" So he immediately tells us that he knows it's Osha. You think it was the tattoo or something through the Force?
I think the tattoo. I think he knew it was. I mean,
and the ominous quote.
But it's interesting because he seems to know a lot about Osha, which
a lot about Osha, and like more than May would maybe have even been able to tell him.
May would have no idea. May thought he was dead. She was dead. May would have no.
Well, he pulls connection from like her past, and he pulls connection from like what we find is his experience with the Jedi,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm still.
I have my theories on that one.
Oh, me too. But it does seem like there's something in the middle where like it's specific to Osha.
Because May would have no clue that Osha not only trained as a Jedi, but is no longer one.
And I suspect, again, let's talk more about the scene, and I kind of want to use some of what he says here to get at that later, the idea of Chimere's experience with the Jedi. So she, kind of easily returns to her Jedi stance where she steals the lightsaber, and like I said, he immediately knows it's her. He comes out and gets dressed. Again, that was an interesting just framing for the whole scene. I don't know. But he kind of chastises Osha about whether she should kill him or not, and why was it not okay for Sol to do it on the battlefield, but why is it okay for her to do it now? And at every turn, this guy seems to really be trying to poke and prod the Jedi and try to. He's almost like a proxy for like an internet troll. It seems.
Yeah.
Like nothing they do is going to be right.
And he's remarkably calm the entire time. Just delivers every line with the same tone, trying to think of the word, like tone, speed, everything's very direct.
It's not monotone. It's almost monotone.
It's
like
direct.
And very different from the Chimere when we saw him in the
like
apothecary.
He knows who he's talking to, and I think it just adds a layer to the lore of Chimere about what is he. Like he seems to be very well versed and practiced in speaking to different groups and knowing what to say to them.
Because this is very different than I'm going to kill everyone here because they saw my face. Yeah. This is I'm going to turn on the Sith charm. For again, we'll kind of talk about it later. But Osha asks if he killed Sol and May. He says no to both. Are you surprised he's being honest?
No, I'm not. Were you?
I was for a second, and then I kind of thought, he might. He kind of uses it against her. The fact that she asked about Sol first, once again, to kind of tear down the Jedi and talk about how it's a special relationship between a master and a pupil. He keeps using this term pupil. I'm wondering if he's using it to soften like what the Sith might be up to. And again, we'll kind of get there. I keep getting ahead of myself with talking about his reveals. This then kind of takes us. Do you have anything else to add about their interaction by the Sith bath?
Ooh, I thought it was interesting how his first sentence to her about other than "I know it was you" is you should adjust your stance. It really gives him that. Like, what's his goal? Is he there to help her? And I'm sure it casts doubt in her mind too. Like, I just watched him kill all these people. Now he's telling me how to kill him better. So,
I think this is all a situation he designed.
100%.
And I think he knows that he is not really in danger here, because you could presume that maybe someone did this to him.
Yeah.
this exact thing. Like he's taken a page. This might be the. Have you ever heard the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise?
Yeah.
But for Osha potentially. Given that though, we cut back to Sol and May, and this scene is where I think Sol shows that he is one of the like he is a Jedi. He makes the decisions that a Jedi should, even if he has faltered at one point. So he comes back to the cockpit after fixing the comms, and May kind of gets up and looks like uncomfortable, and he gives her, who he thinks is Osha, we've decided, gives her a big hug and says, he talks about how Chimera, the man who corrupted your sister, made him essentially embrace his rage. He apologizes to her and says it's time to make things right and face the High Council and tell them everything. I just thought that this scene, he's clearly been, he says, 16 years been suppressing something, and seeing him walk towards making the right decision and knowing it's the right decision and not being reluctant about it was really nice.
Yes. It was. He needed a catalyst to get him there, and what better way than what just happened to him?
I think it isn't, and I. Do you think that he perceives a connection to, do you think he perceives a connection between what happened on Brandok and the events that just happened in the last episode?
I think he has to. I think this was all too real for him. And I feel like history repeated itself. And I don't know which way that is. Could we see... Because we're not done with Brendok. You and I both know that. Everybody watching knows that we're not done with Brendok.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think when we get to Brendok... I'm looking ahead here. Do we think whatever happened is similar to what we saw on Kofar? Just things got out of hand really quick.
It's
and
very
Sol
possible.
was helpless.
And I suspect we're going to see something on Kofar that... Can I throw a different question back at you before we answer that? Do you think we're going to get dual perspectives on what happened on Kofar?
On Kofar?
Do you think... I'm so sorry, not on Brendok. I'm so sorry. Do you think, Last Jedi style, Luke remembers it one way, Ben remembers it one way, and then the truth somewhere in the middle? Do you think it's going to be something like that?
Absolutely. I think we're going to see it through May's perspective now.
And then do you think it'll bounce between May and Sol's perspectives almost?
That's where I'm not sure, because we're going to get May's perspective. I don't know what it is, or maybe we won't get May's. Maybe we'll get Sol's instead. But I feel like May and Sol are more intertwined than we realize at the moment.
I don't disagree with that. I think there's definitely there's a connection that goes beyond what we've seen, I think, on Brendok.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, I think it's possible that we could see this shift, or it's just straight up a flashback episode like we saw previously. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think, like you said, is it a mirror sort of thing? Is it, I don't know. It's just really intriguing what could have happened there. And we're not going to have to wait much longer, luckily. No. But as this all is happening, the comms return, but then the power goes out on the ship. And May says she'll go, May as Osha says she'll go look. We cut to Coruscant, and we see Vernestra having what seems to be a rather, political meeting with a senator, where another senator wants to investigate the Jedi, but that shouldn't be a problem because the Jedi are always so transparent.
Right. I feel like this parallels. I'm sure you've had an experience like this where you've had some sort of either done something that you're trying to hide, and then somebody else says something completely unrelated, and you're just like, oh my God, this is horrible. They know I did something. I feel like that's where Vernestra was. Where this guy's like, listen, it's just politics. And Venestra's like, oh my God, they know everything about me. They know everything I've done.
Yes, and that attitude that you're just describing persists with Vernestra through the entire episode. Essentially, what are you hiding sort of situation. But Mog, who we talked about, the guy that was talking to Sol, he ends up coming in and saying, like, we got a choppy distress call from Master Soul. He got the important stuff, basically. Yeah. Everyone died. His whole team died. And something went wrong. And, Vernestra's like, all right, we're going. She clearly has some sort of idea that this is something more.
Yes.
But it's intriguing because she doesn't really know, it seems, what happened on Brendok. So it's like she's got her own demon she's battling.
I think we'll get there.
I think we could talk about the demons now because do you have anything else to say about Vernestra Coruscant before we move forward? All right. So we get to the unnamed planet. That's totally not Octo. And May and I'm so sorry. Osha and Chimere. This I was messing up May and Osha before they swapped. Now they swap places, and it's extra confusing. But Osha is talking to Chimere, and she said, like, how do you know so much about the Jedi? And he says he was a Jedi. And one thing I didn't point out when he was doing his little Sith bath is that he had scars all over him. And I think this they kind of show you the scars again. They make it a point to show Vernestra's light whip, and I think where we're both going with this. This is our theory, our big theory. You can say it if you want.
I think Chimere was Vernestra's Padawan.
Yes, 100%.
As soon as I saw the scar at the bath, I'm like, that's a whip. Like, that is somebody who was, like, just straight up whipped. And then, not to jump too far ahead, when we do see the light whip in action for the first time, I think it was the camera shot they used was very clear to show just how squiggly it could get.
The shape. It's almost like the shape they gave us, that shape from the trailer, is the shape that's on his back. Yes. Vernestra's got her own demons.
Vernestra created a demon.
But that she did. Darth Teeth. But can we talk about this I think there's more than meets the eye here, where Chimere says it was a long time ago when he left the Order. Osha says she's never heard of him. Vernestra is over 100. Is there some sort of weird life magic going on?
That's what I don't know, because I perceived Chimere and Osha to be similar in age.
That's what
I'm gonna Google just for fun how old the actors are. So Manny Jacinto is 36. I think Amanda Stenberg is 24.
Okay.
She's 26.
Hey, we're
25. So, year between us.
Younger.
She was born in 98. October of 98.
Maybe like, yeah, there we go.
So,
all right.
She's about a decade older than her.
Do you think it's forced magic, or it's just like I left long before you even were brought to the Order, or something like that?
I'm not sure. We don't know how long he trained. Long enough to where he could become a Padawan.
And it reads to me at first like there's more to this than meets the eye. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's not just like he was there, he left before she was there. Like, I don't know. It just seems like the phrasing was a little bit weirder than, what they're giving it.
And it seems like the Jedi all kind of know each other in a really weird way. Like, I've heard of this person. And for her to be like, I didn't know you were a thing. It's kind of telling too that he might be a lot older than he's letting on to be.
Or Captain Cover-Up Vernestra did something to make it as if he never existed.
Gaslight Queen.
Honestly, she is.
Vernestra, didn't you have a Padawan?
So after that,
they just joking. Vernestra, didn't you have a Padawan? No. It's that guy behind you.
Well, she did have one in the books.
Well.
And then if you recall, that got spoiled for me when we read our initial like breakdowns of the characters from the data bank. So she did have a Padawan. It didn't go. Something happened. Not great. So that was her first Padawan forever ago when she was a real young Jedi. So who knows what happened in between. But anyway, we get back to the ship and Basil kind of attacks May. So we've talked about Basil knowing. Basil, he's definitely the one that made the ship's power go off, right? Because unfortunately, the only person who could directly communicate with Basil was Yord.
Yeah. Speaking
to Yord's value. But we then see, as this is happening, Basil's kind of, he attacks May.
As best as he can.
And I hated that she factory reset Pip. I did not like that very much.
After Pip squirted her in the face.
It was pretty good. There was a lot of, like, slapstick. Like, people would probably say, oh, this is totally something George Lucas would do.
The Three Stooges in the cargo hold.
Seriously. And then when she changed Pip, his eyes went red. I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all.
Well, I think that was a pretty big thing there, which we'll get to in a second.
Yeah. So we then get to some more Chimere Osha discussions. This is essentially where they have a real long talk, and you get some more insight into him. And at the end of the day, he kind of says, "What do you want? What do you want?" He wants the power of two. Mm-hmm. That to me kind of not cemented, but firmly held in place the idea that he is a Sith. Again.
What?
I think we're going to say the same thing.
Where does he? Is he in the Sith totem pole? I don't know, but he knows enough to know about the power of two, and how important it is to pick the correct second.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's found his target.
Yes, and I think he this whole conversation they're having here, he kind of pushes and pokes and prods, talks about how, like, she calls him out for killing everyone, and he basically says, like, all her relationships are one-sided.
Yeah.
And one thing we kind of glassed over is how he talks about how she's special in the Force, and the Jedi are lying about how you don't need to practice with the Force, use it a different way. Basically, he's trying to, like, con her into using the dark side. And I think something that happened last week is Chimere is a very smooth talker, like you talked about. And I think he's kind of sugarcoating the sour, bitter truth of what the Sith are and what they're after. And I think it's kind of like, on first glance, you're like, yeah, maybe he has a point. And then when you really take, like, more than 1 second to think about what he's saying, it's like, this is so bad.
Yeah. He's had some practice. It's not the first time he's given this speech. No.
And he talked about how he was disappointed in May because he thought she wanted more. I think he's playing on, like, the sibling. He's just tugging the little strings to make her. And he ultimately gets her to crack by saying, like, she was like, I'm leaving. And he says she forgot to do something, basically asking her to kill him, which is such a Sith move.
Yeah. And he knew she wasn't going to do it.
And then oh, yeah, I think the whole time, again, he knows exactly what's happening. And he kind of, eggs her on again, and she ends up, getting frustrated and, like, turning the lightsaber on and pushing it in. And again, the dialogue is like anger, pain. He's really pushing her. And you can see she taps into it, which is, again, like I said, the title of the episode is Teaching and Corruption. And I think the seeds of both of those things have been planted, even from what we've seen so far. And just the highlighting between Soul and Chimere, so great. I think they're pillars of the light and the dark, almost archetypical, kind of. Wonderful. So, anything else to add on that whole conversation? There's a lot we kind of skipped over, but got the broad strokes.
Yeah. No, it was. I think we hit it pretty well. I mean, I think Chimere's outfit was interesting that he chose.
Like a mix of, like, white and black.
Yeah, it stood out. I don't know why it stood out. I don't know if it was intentional. But we've only ever seen him in dark. We've only ever really seen Sith in dark, and then we see this guy walk out in a crisp white top. I don't know.
It
I
is.
don't know if I'm reading too much into that, but
It was striking. Like I didn't pay much mind into what it could mean, but it really is like. And the fact that this discussion was like happening in the day and like the daylight coming through the crack, it was very interesting. Like the way that all of it was kind of set up.
were,
Very
were you
intrigued
expecting
by it.
OSHA to pull out the second saber?
I thought he was gonna. I thought in some way she was gonna pull the second saber out,
I thought she was.
but
I thought she was going to do it and catch him off guard, but I don't know if we can catch this guy off guard yet.
I know. I think he's kind of in his element. So anyway, we cut back to Coruscant and we have Mog kind of begging Vernestra not to go. And I don't know. Again, this could be some stuff from the books. I've not gotten far enough in the High Republic books to know like all of Vernestra's story, but the hyperspace, comment, like you really don't have to go all the way out there to the outer rim.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there's a reason he doesn't want her to go beyond just like if our boss asked to do something, I'd be like, no, it's fine.
I think
got
he's just
it.
kind of fearful and not a bad fearful, but just like I'm good. You can stay over there. I'll get it done. I don't want you over my shoulder.
Mm-hmm. Like almost scared. Like could she be looking for a bigger can of worms or something than is
You notice
actually
he had
there?
a braid.
But she is. What'd you say?
What's his name? Moog.
Mog
Mog had
I
a
don't
braid. I don't know if you caught that.
I did catch it. So he's a Padawan. I don't think he's her Padawan.
I think he might be.
Right?
I don't know.
That could be intriguing.
Would I don't know what other Padawan would be able to talk to the person who seems to be not one of the top 4 people in the Order at this time.
Well, I will say they keep referring to the High Council, the High Council, the High Council, the
She's
High
on
Council.
it, right?
I feel like not that we know of, because she even says Council. So like I feel like the Jedi we're seeing are like, if they're A tier, these are like the step below.
I think Venestra's A tier. I think she,
for all the political stuff she's doing, and like how concerned she is with like the optics, you'd think maybe.
you've never seen House of Cards, have you?
I've not.
So House of Cards focuses on Frank Underwood, who starts the House as a whip. I forget if it was House or Senate. And the whip's role is to basically get the votes. I feel like that's what Venestra is. While she's not in the leadership, she's pulling the strings behind the scenes.
Yeah, she's definitely without a doubt important.
And I think that interaction with Venestra and Mog, he said, "Oh, going to the Outer Rim," and she says, "We're going to Kofar," and he's like, "How'd you know it was Kofar?"
'Cause I sent them there. It was.
That's got to be a weird feeling for him.
Yeah, no, he's definitely. I think he's kind of like, okay, sure.
You weren't supposed to. I didn't tell you that, did I?
Oh man, that's good. But yeah, so she inevitably is like, all right, we're going. And then we cut back to Sol and Osha, but we kind of see Basil like scurrying under, and I'm sorry, I said Sol and Osha. Sol and May. Basil scurrying.
Sol and
What?
Osha for right now.
Moshe with an M. But you can just see Sol is still like carrying this heavy weight of like what had happened. And they have this really interesting discussion where this is like so many times they've done this, and I'm like, I'm fine. I'm like, it's time. We need to know. They do one final like, I haven't told you everything. You were so young. I'm not young now. And then they get interrupted when he's clearly gonna like say what happened. I was like, you had to do it one more time, didn't you? Well, actually, they kind of leave it on that too. So maybe not quite one more time, but they end up, the lights come back on, so things are working. May runs away, and we see Sol, as May runs up to like communicate, we see Sol stun her. I opened Twitter for like 2 seconds in between when I finished and when I started getting our notes together to record this. And one of the complaints was, how did Soul inexplicably know that it was May? If you can't see this because we're not showing our faces yet, but Dan just double face palmed.
Perhaps it's our good friend Basil. Question for you. Do we think Soul understands him?
I think it's possible because there's very little else that could explain how quickly it happens, but also it could.
I think he does. I think he knows and just didn't let on.
And we've already talked, like, Jedi are like have some level of like empathic abilities or senses where, like, if he can sense that Basil's distressed or even look at him like pointing like something's wrong, I think that would be enough for Soul to say like something's not right here. And I think Soul might be able to look back on all the conversations they were having. It did seem a little more rigid and less natural than the conversations that he's had with Osha in this show.
That was going to be my question. When do you think he found out? Do you think Soul was toying with May about the...
Yes.
I think he knew before this last conversation.
Yes, and we kind of glossed over it, but when he talks about Pip, and when he talked about how much she loved Pip, even though it's a machine, I think that's when he kind of was able to figure it out.
He saw there was a factory reset and was like, Osha would not do this.
And she's holding... The way she's holding Pip, like he wasn't in his little holster. There was no... It felt like someone holding like a cell phone.
Yeah.
So... And Pip is no cell phone.
Not yet. Maybe an iPod.
Well, I'd buy that. So after the scene where he stuns May, again, great Basil content. I know you said I might not like Basil as much as Baba Frick, and I don't think we're quite there, but he's getting there.
Yeah.
And in a strange twist of fate, Soul does not stay and wait for help. Mm-hmm. He kind of like, they say stay where you are. He shuts the comms off and punches the hyperdrive.
Where's he going?
Where is he going? Does he know where Osha is?
I don't think so.
Is he going to Coruscant? I think he might be going to Coruscant.
I don't think he's going to Coruscant. I think he's going to Brendock.
He kind of says at the end of the episode, we have work to do. And we can talk about that when we get there, I guess. But as Soul is leaving, in a almost like Looney Tunes style, Vernestra and the other Jedi get there. And this is where we start to see Mog Moog sowing the seeds of doubt. Well, they said it's a bug colony, and no one would have survived that. And Vernestra still... I don't know how Vernestra knows, but she's still like, something's... I know something's wrong here. Yeah. I don't think we've been given enough information to quite know why yet. Mm-hmm. But she clearly feels the need to press on. And that then takes us to some more Chimere Osha discussion. And he starts to tell us a little bit about his helmet. I thought that was intriguing.
It was.
He drops the cortosis. He says what it is. And I thought it was really interesting that he's using the helmet like the youngling blocking out senses helmet. Further cementing that he knows about the Jedi.
Did he? Is this just the Mandela effect, or did he say like what we wore?
I have it pulled up. Hang on, let's see. He says cortosis, handy against lightsabers, but also a sensory deprivation headpiece, like we used as younglings. Yes. And he says it blocks out all your senses, so it's just you, the Force, and what you bring with you. Classic, like calling back to Yoda.
Who we know is the Grand Master at the moment, correct? I think in the timeline, I think he is.
We don't know, but we can assume.
Okay.
I mean, in the High Republic, bear with me.
Well, you do that. I'll ask you another side question. Did the color of the mask? I thought it was black this whole time. It's very clearly like a coppery bronze, much like the Hasbro mask we saw online.
Yes, that was revealed as we were recording our last episode.
Yes.
It's bronzy, and you kind of see the like vein of Cortosis, like in the mountain where he is. That it's bronze. I think that the Hasbro helmet may have been a little extreme, and maybe that's just because it was digital. But I think it's the color that it's more bronze than black.
I think it was black when we first saw it. I think it was black.
Mm.
Do we think he did that to hide it?
Maybe, but I don't know that they would necessarily have even known. Also, real quick, Yoda was a Grandmaster during the High Republic, which would have been 100 years before this. So I would wager he still is. I don't think Yoda got a demotion.
No. Probably not.
Probably not. But here we have Kymir asking Osha to essentially try the mask on. Try it on. Why not?
Yeah.
Again, so soft and smooth. It's like, oh, I won't hurt you. Go ahead. There's nothing wrong with it. So sneaky. And I think by the time he's done with whatever he wants to happen, whoever he's preying on will be a Sith before they even realize it.
I think it was really interesting the way he said it. He kind of said, like, the only person who controls you is you. Like, you're the only thing holding yourself back. So if you want to do it, go do it. Nothing's stopping you.
Mm-hmm. And it's like, he says that, but he is actively controlling her. It's very fidgety. And then, you know, the transition out of this scene might be one of the worst transitions that I've ever experienced emotionally. Because after the scene, we see Osha looking at the mask, and then it immediately cuts, after like zooming in on Osha, it immediately cuts to Jackie's face, laying there lifeless. Why? Why that? Why did it have to be that?
To show the gravity of the mask. Like,
I know. And you know, you see the aftermath, and of course they show you Yord too.
Oh, and
laying there all.
And then we hear Force echoes. That's.
And I like that, hearing the echoes of like what was happening, and the, you know, she's hearing and experiencing the events, which I thought was very cool, very Fallen Order-ish. Like, I don't know if she has psychometry. We've seen, you know, that's like where they can touch an object and feel its history. Maybe it's just the intense forceness that was happening. And this is where my distaste for the Padawan comes in. Because Vernestra clearly, I think, is able to piece together what's happening here. While Mog Moog is over there asserting that Master Soul...
And this is...
And
Go ahead.
No,
I disagree with you. I think it is the most logical option for Mog to say that.
I agree, but I think that's why Vernestra's here.
I think Vernestra's are a lot shadier than we realize.
I
think
agree, but I don't think that this is I don't think it's necessarily logical to say. So do they really believe that Soul has the power to do this to all these Jedi?
Yes, he said it. Mog.
He said it would.
Mog believes that Soul is strong enough to do this. He kind of said it.
Hang on, I got it. One versus many, his power extraordinary. I think his would refer to
Keep going.
Whoever did this. His skills erratic. His sole aim was to leave no survivors. And then we got Vernestra with the sweet light whip killing the bug, the Umbra Moth.
Going.
They were all killed by a lightsaber. What does that tell you? A powerful Jedi has fallen. Vernestra looks off into the distance, as if she might know who it is.
She can see it.
And then Mog Mog says, "You don't think Master Soul was responsible? That's quite the accusation," Vernestra says. To which he responds, "Who else would possess the power to slay such a strong group?" You are correct. But I don't know. Vernestra then... they're on two different wavelengths, clearly. Because Vernestra's looking off into the distance talking about something to tip the scales.
Because Vernestra knows what happened. The average Jedi, where the Sith are probably extinct, as we hear our bud Ki-Adi-Mundi say in Phantom Menace, that would not be the logical leap.
And I don't think that they need to immediately jump to Sith, but I think Mog shows some of the problems of just immediately snapping to the first thing that comes to his mind and not thinking much deeper.
But looking at everything on the ground in front of us, we know 10 went in. 1 made it out, and that one who made it out turned off his transponder and fled.
But even he says, why would he have sent us the distress call in the first place, though?
Throw him off the trail.
We're arguing about nothing right now. You apparently your Mog is your favorite Star Wars character. Forget Count Dooku.
Listen, when they drop the Mog Legacy lightsaber, I'll be the first in line to buy it.
You and let me check my you and you would be the only people there. I'm just kidding. I'm sure someone
more for me then.
Just not me. You could buy all of them.
All 2 that they produce.
And go into bankruptcy. You'd have one of one. But anyway, Vernestra does say something to tip the scales, which again is very big. And she says back to the ship. And the closure of them actually bringing the bodies of the fallen Jedi back to bury them, I thought that was nice. That's the least they could give us after the bloodbath we saw last week. Then we come back to our final 2 scenes, and I think this really sets the stage for what's to come next for this show. We have Soul has restrained Osha May. Soul has restrained May. Now, fully at this point, I apologize. Sorry. Soul has restrained May, and she's not able to get out of the handcuffs and leg cuffs, I believe. Mm-hmm. And he basically says, I've been thinking for 16 years about what I have to say to you, and it's time for me to say it. Before he does that, he says 2 things. And I think you may actually be right. I think he might not be going to Coruscant because he said he needs to do 2 things. We need to find your master, and we need to save Osha. Mm-hmm. So I think that I don't know how he might know where he is, but I think that's where he's headed. Mm-hmm. But that's we got 2 parts here, and I kind of got excited and got ahead of myself. Let's talk about the "we have much to do" comment. What do you have to think about that?
I think they're going to Brendok. I don't know what they're doing there. I think they're going to go retrace their steps. And also, hot Dan theory. What if Mother Coral's not dead?
I would love that idea.
What if that's who they're going to see?
Could be. And what if the planet isn't Octo? And what if it's Brendok?
I did think that. Could be.
I mean, Brendok seemed a little varied in what it looked like topologically, maybe geologically. I don't know. So, I think that could be.
And we know Chymir's been there fairly recently.
Well, do we? Oh, yeah, to get the leaf for the poison. Or at least, knows enough about it to be influenced. Actually, the more we talk about this, the more I like that a lot.
What?
Story-wise, I often think this is the difference between fan service, even though I don't think this is exactly fan service. It's not just throwing Yoda doing cartwings for no reason. I think Brendok would make more sense for this individual.
We can
story.
get Planet of the Apes, big reveal. Sorry if I spoiled the movie. It came out in I think 1967. Where they were on Earth the whole time.
Again, they show. They don't give you the name for a reason, and there's got to be a reason. And I think again, Brendok might make more sense for this story than Octo. So anyway, find Matt. Why does he want to find the master? Does he want to stop the Sith? Does he regret not taking him out?
I don't. This is where.
Or does he just
I think
Go
he
ahead,
just
sorry.
wants to know more about him. Like, if there's one Sith, are there more Sith?
And I think you're right. It would be irresponsible of him to just assume that if he killed him, the Sith would be
Yeah.
done. So yeah, that, and then obviously find your sister. And then he does. He starts to essentially give what I think the prelude to the actual telling them what happened is. I've had 16 years to think of the opportunity for it. I would say if I ever got to talk to you, and he said, "So you're gonna listen."
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is setting us up for the teaching part of the episode.
Ooh, I disagree. I don't.
What do you think?
I think Chimere was the one doing the teaching.
I think Chimere is doing the corrupting.
I think Osha was his target all along,
So he's corrupting her.
or teaching her in the ways of the Sith, depending on the way.
No,
Depending
no.
on the ways you look at the coin.
So let's just say corruption. Let's say the Sith are bad, which I think is safe to say, and the
I'll
Jedi are
concede
good.
that.
Okay, so Sol is teaching Osha the ways of the Jedi. I'm so sorry. Sol is.
When has Soul made anything of teaching May?
I don't think he's going. Like I said, this is setting him up to win her over to what he has to say. I believe the episode looks called "Teach and Corrupt." I think one of them is getting corrupted, and it's not May.
I think it's too early to tell.
What?
I know you're in the Soul Patrol. I don't.
So
I think I
Go
broke
ahead.
him.
he did, because the Jedi and all of Star Wars, flaws and all, are the good guys. In no circumstance are the Sith ever the
I'm not
good
saying.
guys. Maybe they have some
I'm not
points.
saying they're the good guys at all.
So how could you use the term corrupt in the context of the Jedi?
Let's not act like all the Jedi were perfect.
I just said that. I said that. I said flawed or not, the Jedi. All right, I think we're not gonna. We're not
We need
gonna
to sleep this one off, or I need to sleep this one off, and
Yes, thank you. I appreciate it. So, I won't say my perspective on this is that this scene is setting Sol up to, bring May to the light potentially. Whether she does or not, that's a whole other story. But I think that's kind of what they're asserting. We then cut back. I had a great transition queued up, and you had to turn it into an argument. From my perspective, the corruption part of this episode kind of starts with, you see Osha kind of walking around the helmet. She's investigating it, looking at it, and she sees the cortosis vein in the mountain. And then which I'm just actually looking at it now, it's kind of bronze. So I don't know, maybe not as much as the helmet. Maybe the lightsabers did kind of galvanize it a little bit. Anyway, the episode ends with her putting the helmet on, and you really can see how little you can see there. It's almost as if there shouldn't even be the eye slits. And then you just hear her breathing, and that is the end of the episode. To me, that was corruption, or the start of it.
well, I'll take one giant step back.
Okay.
I think all the titles are vague, intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
And you can teach and corrupt at the same time. You can corrupt Osha as well as teach her in the ways of the Sith.
I think you're being rather literal.
I
mean, you could do this for any of
think
them.
May is the side character. I think Osha was Chimere's target all along, and I think you'll see why.
I think May and Osha are equally prominent characters. And I think one of them is going in one direction, one of them is going in the other. Is the way that this is set up. Whether that's what happens or not, who knows? But I think that's what this is trying to tell us. we can totally disagree on that.
We can talk more about it.
You telling me the Jedi are corrupting people might be the most out-of-pocket thing you've ever said.
Oh.
And what was the wild theory you threw out tonight? There was one.
Oh, I said it at the beginning. It was
something insane.
Not my favorite. I kind of said it to be contrarian. Oh, what was it?
You said that to be contrarian. All right. So that takes us to the end of this episode. We're going to clearly, for the rest of the week until next week, have some stern discussions about what the title of this episode
Listen, you
means.
had Tech Watch.
This leaves us...
You had Tech Watch. Let me have my moment.
You have the Jedi are corrupting people. One of them is a pipe dream. The other is antithetical to the lessons of Star Wars.
What, that people in power are always correct?
No, the idea...
I know, at this point I'm pushing. I'm pushing buttons.
If you haven't noticed, Dan likes to just wind me up like a little toy and just let me go, and that's what's happening right now. So we're going to cut that off. We have 2 episodes of The Acolyte left, episodes 7 and 8. I have one question for you looking forward to next week. Do you think it's going to be we've already kind of talked about this a little bit with the different perspectives, but do you think it's going to be a full-on flashback episode, or do you think we're going to get bits and pieces, Soul talking to May? Maybe the different perspective of, like, Chimere potentially knowing something we've kind of talked about. Like, is he going to say stuff to Osha? Are we going to see the present day and the past, do you think?
I think it depends. It depends on what Soul... Will Soul tell the whole truth? I think by
so.
everything that he's set up, I think yes. He will tell the whole truth.
I agree.
Will we get May flashbacks? Maybe. I've said this theory before, and I'm going to double down on it. I think Chimere was there that night.
I have... Especially knowing that there could be some weird stuff going on with his age... I think you're not out of line by putting
I think
that out
he
there.
was on Brendog. In what capacity, I don't know, but I think he was there.
Because I think him saying to Soul, "You don't remember me," or "You don't recognize me," or something like that last episode. I think it could be more than just the apothecary.
And it could be more than just I was in the Jedi Order.
Yes, I think there's something going on there, and I did want to say, you mentioned like May's perspective. I wonder if it is like Soul will talk and maybe May's memories will be recontextualized given what Soul is saying. And I do think he's going to be honest.
I agree.
So to wrap this up, I want to give us each one wild theory for next week. We're clearly going to get the payoff for all of this Brendok business. What's your wild theory? You get one. Make it count.
Chimere was there, and he has been omitted from everything we've seen so far intentionally.
I feel like it's a reasonable theory. But I'll assert my theory, which could be, it's just the same, but in another direction. Soul did nothing wrong. The only thing Soul did wrong is cover it up. That's my pipe dream. I don't think that's actually true.
We'll see.
But I also think the power in Soul is not that he did nothing wrong, but that he's able to move on from doing nothing wrong.
I agree. I think that's what we're going to see with Soul.
Absolutely. All right. Anything else to add for this week? Great episode. The Jedi corrupt no one. With that, thank you so much for your time and for listening. We are Blue Shadow Podcast. Please feel free to give us a like or subscribe on your podcast platform of choice or on our YouTube page, Blue Shadow. And feel free to give us a follow on Twitter at Blue Shadow Pod or on Instagram at Blue Shadow Podcast. And consider checking out our Facebook page, which is Blue Shadow. With that, thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next time.
See you next week.